Dial 650 presents It's Your Money, an up-close and personal look at your finances. Here's your host, Fred Snyder.
Up in the morning and out to school.
Okay, we are definitely back. We're here to talk about your money, more importantly about your money and how to keep it. That's what the show is all about. Not about making money, it's about keeping it, and there's a vast difference between making it and keeping it. Most of us work our lives, all of our lives, earning a small fortune, and we end up broke. We end up at 65 with no money, dependent on the government, family, friends, charity, etc. Not self-sufficient, not able to count on ourselves. We end up with empty pockets, and we are flat broke. And I want you to just think about that fact for a minute. Take a second, sit back, and think and visualize yourself when you finish working at age 65 or 70, whenever it is, and you have no money. And you're looking forward to living 20, maybe 25, maybe 30 years broke, dependent on the family and the state. It's a sad state of affairs, but those are the statistics. I've cited these statistics many times. If you take 100 people who start out equal today at the age of 25, by the time they end up at 65, one is rich. 1 out of 100. 4 are well-to-do, 5 are still working, 36 are dead, and the remaining 54 are dead broke, dependent on family and state. Whether we like to admit it or not, those are the statistics, and they've been proven time and time and time again. The biggest problem in the world is lack of money. We all make a lot of money, but we don't keep it because they didn't teach us in schools how to keep it. They didn't teach us how to mitigate our taxes. They didn't teach us about time and compound interest. They didn't teach us about the value of an overall financial plan and how important it is to set goals. Being able to sit down and articulate the direction that you want to go in financially, to be able to say, I want a bigger house. I want the house I want rather than the one I'm prepared to settle for. Is that the way it is? Okay? Take a minute. Just think about it. Is your life the way you really want it to be? Do you want to be rich or do you want to be broke? And why is it that people fail financially? I've defined 13 fundamental reasons why people fail financially. 13. But I think there's a couple that are really important. One of them is lack of a plan. When you don't have a plan, you're planning to fail by default. So if you're listening to this show right now, ask yourself, do I have a financial plan? I bet you don't. I bet you don't even know what a financial plan is. Okay? So you don't have a financial plan, which is a blueprint to take you from where you are right now to where you want to go financially. So where do you stand right now? What are your assets? What are your liabilities? What's your income? What's your expenses? What's your net worth? What's your cash flow? Do you have a deficit or a surplus at the end of every month? Or are you just broke on payday? You get your paycheck and it's gone. Nothing to put aside. You should be putting away at least one dime, 10 cents out of every dollar. You should take 10 cents out of every dollar, pay yourself first, invest that money, put it in the bank, buy some stocks, buy some mutual funds, put it into an insurance policy. You should take at least 10% of what you earn, pay yourself first, and budget to pay everybody else. Simple, simple, simple. But we don't do it. Maybe it's just too simple. Hey, and the government's no better. We have an election coming up. So I want to talk about government debt. But anything I would say about government debt, I can apply to provinces, municipalities, and individuals. When I look at Canada's budget figures on my screen, I got Canada's federal budgetary balance. So we were running deficits since the recession of 2008. And according to the government anyway, maybe it's so, maybe it's not, we're going to have a surplus. A little bit of money left over. That's the way your finances should look. You should not overdraw your bank account and then cover your overdrafts with borrowed money. Shouldn't do that. Shouldn't carry balances on your credit cards. You should shop for the best prices. very, very important to do that. You should shop for everything you spend money on. Should shop for life insurance. Should shop for mutual funds and investments. You just don't buy the first thing that comes along. You know the old saying, if you go to the grocery store hungry, you know what happens. You blow the budget, the grocery budget. So here we have some figures. So we look at the national debt right now. The national debt in Canada, I'm talking the federal debt, is about $625 billion. Add what the provinces owe to that, it's over $1 trillion. And you can see what the trends are if you look at those graphs that are on my screen. So why am I talking about this? Well, the way the government spends money, that's their budget. It's called fiscal policy. So what is the government's fiscal policy? Trudeau the other day said that the budget will balance itself. I got a bridge to sell you. Budgets don't balance themselves. Yours doesn't. Government budgets don't balance themselves. Trudeau said that he's going to run some deficits to invest in infrastructure. That might not be a bad idea. Now, I'm not bemoaning Trudeau. I'm not promoting any elected official or potentially elected official on this show. I just say this. Pick your politicians wisely. And wisely means you understand fiscal policy. You understand about money. You can't borrow your money. You can't borrow money to get yourself out of trouble. You get in financial difficulties, pretty hard to fix it by borrowing money. Because when you borrow money, now you got to pay interest, so your expenses were high already, and then you borrowed money, now you got to pay interest on the money that you borrowed. That becomes a problem. So what are you going to do? Who are you going to vote for? What are the numbers, if we look at the numbers? So now, basically, there's good debt and there's bad debt. Debt is good even for government sometimes, but it depends on the kind of debt. Finance Minister Flaherty said that the annual deficit in 2015 will only be about $5 billion, a very modest number to deal with. For instance, the federal deficit for this year, originally estimated at $50 billion, is now a modest 10% higher at $55 billion. Like it's not money? That's a lot of money. But I can tell you there was a time in Canada under Mulroney when the federal deficit was about $40 billion, about 8 times that. So you got to vote for a government that is going to manage their money. You have to make sure that you manage your money as well. Peter Drucker once said, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So when we look at deficits, the annual deficit in 2015 will only be about $5 billion. So we've talked about it already, all right? That's your bottom line. Total federal debt, Ottawa's total federal debt right now is $628 billion and rising at the rate of $5 billion per year if we continue to run that deficit. The provinces and local governments are also running up sizable annual deficits. The numbers don't look quite so bad when measured against the size of the economy. So if we compare the debt to GDP, it's not so bad. But that's kind of fudging it a bit. What is the actual debt? That's the problem. So again, ladies and gentlemen and listeners out there, manage your money wisely by having a good fiscal policy or a budget. Just call it a budget. I almost hate to use the word budget because it scares people. I don't want a budget. It's not a good idea. Well, why not? What's wrong with a budget? It helps you manage your money. So what's wrong with managing your money? I had a fellow one time tell me that he didn't care about money. And I looked him straight in the eye and I said, well, I think you'd lie about other things. You know, it's not that we don't care about money. If somebody were to give you $1 million, would you turn it down? But if I told you had to work hard, real hard to get $1 million, and it would take a long time, you might not be motivated to do it. That's what the bottom line is. So again, there's an election coming up. We have to look at what the numbers are. So who are you going to vote for? You're going to vote for Trudeau? Harper? Mulcair? Where do we stand? What do you think? Are we going to have a majority government? A minority conservative government? Right now, the Tories are leading by a narrow margin. So how are you going to vote? And I guess it all boils down to the one group of words that basically says, pick your politicians wisely. Who is going to be the best fiscal manager of your money? And why is that important to you? Well, the amount of taxes you pay. If the increased taxes, you got less money to save and invest. If the increased taxes, the income that you earn on your investments is taxed more severely. So if taxes go up, that affects your financial future. If governments run deficits, maybe our kids are going to have to pay those deficits off. That affects your family fortune. So in other words, your financial future is intricately tied to the government. The government's your partner. Your partner in business. If you're in a high tax bracket, they want half of everything that you earn. Half. That's a full partner. So what do you do about it? That's what we're talking about. So again, ladies and gentlemen and listeners out there, we encourage you to call. We share this show with you, our listeners. And the number to call is area code 604-280-0650. Long distance is 877-280-0650. Log on, www.cl650.com. And for those who are shy or reluctant to talk on the air, Frida is down at the office right now. You can reach Frida at 604-737-3512. Long distance, 1-800-661-1495. Give us a call. We're talking about your money, more importantly about your money and how to keep it. And we've been giving away the workbook by Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, the workbook that is a $34 value. So anybody who wants to get their future going today, get the workbook, fill it in. Let it be your guide. Create a burning desire to succeed financially. Become obsessed with financial success, and you'll probably get there. Be proactive, not reactive. Proactive means you do something. So get your future going today. Create your own future by having a well-designed, well-crafted overall financial plan. That's what I do. My mission, my raison d'etre, is to teach people what they need to know to make better financial decisions, better and more effective financial decisions. So give us a call. Again, it's seated at our next workshop. No obligation, written financial plan. And that fabulous book by Napoleon Hill. Not the book itself, Think and Grow Rich, but the workbook. I think it's better than the book. Because it makes you do something. It makes you get involved. It makes you participate. That's what we're talking about. I want to do a case study right now. Very interesting situation. This is a person that came into the office to see me, and this is a copy of the portfolio. And no names, so nobody knows who it is. But this fellow has 17 positions in a portfolio with a competitor. The securities he holds in the portfolio are Alberta Gas, BCE, Bank of Nova Scotia, Canadian Oil Sands, Crescent Point Energy, CD Real Estate Investment Trust, Enerplus Corporation. I'm not going to go through them all, but there's the holdings. And the asset allocation of those holdings range from 4.5, the second one is 20.35, that's BCE. Next is 6.02. Next biggest is 10.4, that's TD Bank. Basically, and the portfolio adds up currently to $1,036,000. Actual case study. A year ago, the portfolio was worth $1.5 million. That portfolio has declined $466,000 in the last year. Now, why is that? Well, if you look at the portfolio, the highlighted ones, energy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 out of 19 holdings are energy. That's oil and gas. Why do you think the Canadian dollar has declined so much? Because 30% of Canada's economy is energy. Energy, ladies and gentlemen, listeners out there, right now is not the place to be. Every single holding that this fellow has is in the red. Every single one. And the total losses on paper at this point is $466,682. Now this fellow just retired. He says his tolerance for risk is low. This portfolio is not a low-risk investment. In fact, it's an extremely high-risk investment. Individual stocks, no professional management, not well diversified, overly invested in energy. You don't want that. Could that be you? Maybe it's time to get a second opinion on your investment portfolio. Doesn't cost anything. Gives you an idea where you stand. And maybe your investment portfolio is fantastic. Maybe it's great. Wouldn't it be nice to know that for sure? So there's three kinds of people listening to this show. There's those who do not have a financial plan. You don't have one. You're planning to fail. There are those with a financial plan, but they don't understand it. They don't understand. Half the people come in, they show me their financial plan if they have one, and they don't understand it. 60 pages of gobbledygook. Okay? Haven't got a clue what it's all about. And then there's those who have a financial plan, and it's kind of pretty good, and they're fairly high net worth. They're comfortable with their situation, but they're a little worried maybe this plan isn't exactly the way it should be. I need a second opinion just to be sure. So where do you fit in? Make a phone call. Check it out. That's what we're talking about. So once again, get your investment portfolio analyzed. That really is your investment plan. And your investment plan is part of your overall financial plan, because your overall financial plan will include other things. In addition to your investments, it will include exactly how much life insurance you need. Tell you exactly. It will include all the what ifs. What if I become disabled? What if I end up in long-term care? All these issues are covered in there. What about my estate? What about my will, my enduring power of attorney? All of those factors are in. That's the financial plan. You have your net worth, which is the difference between your assets and your liabilities, well-defined, a set of financial statements. You have your cash flow, you have your income, you have your expenses, and the cash flow is the difference, whether you have a deficit, a surplus, or whether you're just perfectly balanced at the end of every month. Some people might say, well, I got a great financial plan. I'm not saving any money, but at the end of the month, I am able to pay my bills, but there's nothing left over. That's not a good plan. You got to have something. You got to have a surplus. How do you get the surplus? Okay. 604-280-0650. Long distance, 877-280-0650. Log on, www.CIL650.com. And for those who are shy or reluctant to talk on the air, read us down at the office at 604-737-3512. Long distance, 1-800-661-1495. Remember, once again, we're talking about your money, more importantly about your money and how to keep it. Ask yourself the question, how long have I worked? Do it right now. Get a pencil out. Write all this stuff down. Take some notes. How long have I worked? How much money have I made? God, I've been working for 20 years. I've been earning $100,000 a year on average. How much money have I made? Made an awful lot. I'm not even going to bother to do the math. But the key question is, how much of that do I have left today? How much of what I've made during my lifetime do I have left today? And the more critical question is, are you happy with the answers? Are you happy with the answers? Would you like to be happier with the answers? Get yourself a financial plan. Make your plan even better. Okay? To make your plan better, here's the questions. How do I get a better rate of return? How do I find more money to save and invest? How can I invest money that I normally pay out in income tax? I talked to a client of mine this morning on the way out here. He didn't know how much money he could put into a TFSA. Okay? Didn't know. Well, for your information, it's $10,000 a year right now. $10,000 for you, $10,000 for your wife or your spouse. That's $20,000 a year going forward. If you've never made a contribution to a TFSA, this year between yourself and your spouse, you could invest $82,000 into a TFSA, and any money that makes is absolutely 100% forever income tax free. You can put money in, you can take it out, and you can put it back. If you take it out and you put it back the same year, you got a penalty for an over-contribution, so you can't put it back the same year. But if you took out some money this year, you can put it back next January if you want it. Maybe you can use a TFSA to help educate your children. There's all kinds of things that you can do with a TFSA. And I'll bet you there are many, many people listening to this show right now who don't have a TFSA, or could invest more money into a TFSA than they've already done so far. Okay? So there you go. Let's talk to Melanie from Richmond. Melanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hi, Melanie.
Hi.
Okay, what's your question? You're on the air.
Okay, so I moved from Calgary, and I was always used to owning a home where I could borrow money out of it to pay down my credit cards. And when I moved to Richmond, all I could afford was a float home. And now they're telling me that I can't borrow money against my float home. So I have my float home paid out, so that's fine. But now my credit card debt, I'm wondering, should I be cashing in RRSPs to pay off my credit card debt? Because I can't borrow it now out of my float home.
Well, the first thing I would do, Melanie, is ask you this question. Do you have a financial plan?
Like you were just saying, I've got one, but I have no idea what any of it means, to be honest with you.
Okay, all right. Bottom line is this. What you need to get is a financial plan.
Okay.
It's unlikely that you should cash out RRSPs to pay off debt.
Okay.
Because unless you're in a very low tax bracket, you're going to be taxed when you pull money out of the RRSPs.
Okay.
You got to remember that if let's just suppose that you owe $100,000. I don't know what the numbers are. I'm being hypothetical. But
okay.
let's say you owe $100,000, and the interest on that $100,000 is 5%. That's $5,000 a year.
Right.
But you have to earn $10,000 if you're in the top tax bracket. Pay $5,000 of tax to have $5,000 left to carry that mortgage or that debt. Therefore, the actual interest rate is 10%, not 5%, in before tax dollars. So there's a bit of an incentive to pay it off. But if you got to pay 30% or 35 or 40% to get money out of your RSPs to get your debt paid off, I don't know if that makes sense. Not in every case anyway.
Right.
So therefore, I would have to sit down with you and talk to you for a while before I could figure out whether that would be a good idea or not.
Oh, sounds good. And how do I get to you?
The way you get to me is really easy, but wonderful question. Call Frida. She's down at the office right now at area code 604-737-3512. The long distance, 800-661-1495. Give Frida a call. She's there right now. Book an appointment. Come on in and see me.
Perfect.
Okay, appreciate your call, Melanie. You enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Okay, if you just tuned in and you're listening to the show, I'm certified financial planner Fred Snyder, also a registered financial planner. We're talking about your money and how to keep it. That's the bottom line. And I'm getting back to the case study because I showed you those numbers earlier. This here is some software that I use, which kind of does an X-ray of an overall financial plan. So those securities that I showed you earlier on this spreadsheet, here's the performance. If you look at that graph, if you can see it, $10,000 invested in February of 14 is now worth $9,461. So the graph went up, down, and there's not much performance there. The return on that portfolio in the last year is minus 16.22%. Year to date is minus 8.29. The last 3 months is minus 8.6. The last month is minus 1.76. The best performance is February 14th to February the 15th is up 4.7. The worst performance is minus 16.2, August the 14th to August the 15th. And the risk is fairly high. When we look at the securities inside the portfolio, we have them all listed here. And the biggest return on any one of them was New Flyer Industries. It was up 52.65%. So there's a pro station analysis of that particular portfolio. So anytime anybody comes in, that's what you get. So when we talk about an MRI on your portfolio, that's the gist of it. Okay. Now the standard deviation on that portfolio based on 3 years is 8.21. So again, what you really need is a suitable investment program. That investment program is suitable when it matches your tolerance for risk. If I said to you, what is your tolerance for risk? And frankly, I interview about 15 to 20 people every week. Every single one of those people I ask that question, what is your tolerance for risk? You know what they tell me? Low. So I would say that if I had a chance to talk to 10,000 people, the vast majority of the 10,000 people would tell me their tolerance for risk is low. And then I say, well, let's take a look at your investment portfolio. And we look at the investment portfolio, and it's high risk because it can be measured that way. Remember I said earlier that Peter Drucker, the Dean of Modern Business Management, says that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So the way you measure risk in an investment portfolio is called standard deviation. That's the amount of volatility. And it can be assigned a number. So you got standard deviation as a way to measure risk. And over 90% of the portfolios I look at are fairly risky. They're not low risk at all. And what's even sadder is the client doesn't understand that. The client doesn't know. I said, this fellow that I'm talking about in this particular case study, I said, has your broker called you or talked to you about this particular investment? Have you had any conversations with him or her about it? He said, no. Well, I said, maybe it's time that you figured out how you're going to fix this problem because you're really in a big hole here. How many people listening to this show right now, maybe you should give us a call. Here's a good reason to call. Tell me what you think the price of oil is going to do. I'll guarantee you that if you phone this show right now and you tell me what you think the price of oil is going to do, you won't tell me it's going to go up. So betting on oil is not a good bet. That's like betting on a team that loses all the time. And I'm not talking about the BC Lions because they had a fabulous game last night. Okay? That's like betting on a horse that loses all the time. Why would you ever do that? I don't think so. So let's talk a little bit about risk. I want to develop the theme of risk. So these are called technical risk ratios. Now I'm breaking my own rules because I often say I don't want to get too technical. But I am in this case. Because I want to make a point. I want to convince you, our listeners, that you need to analyze your portfolio, not only based on the rate of return that you get, but how much risk are you taking to get that rate of return? So these are the technical risk ratios that exist out there. So let's talk about them. First, we have alpha. Now, I'm going to explain this in a little more detail as we move along, but alpha is the amount of return the investment manager adds to the expected rate of return, okay? So if the expected rate of return is 8%, which can be calculated, alpha, if the investment generates 10%, alpha is 2% was added onto it. So how much extra return did the good management of the money manager provide? Now, sometimes a manager might take undue risk to get a greater return, so that you got to risk adjust that particular number. And then you have beta. Beta is a ratio which says this is how your portfolio performs compared to the benchmark. So if the benchmark we're using is the Toronto Stock Exchange as an index, if it's 2% better, then beta's 12. If it's less, then let's say it's 8. It's under. 8 means it's not as volatile as the index, and 12 says it's a little more volatile than the index. So there's two very important ratios, alpha and beta. So do you know what the beta of your portfolio is? You're listening to the show right now. Maybe you should know. Okay? Maybe you should phone your financial advisor. Even myself, if it's me, phone me and say, what's my beta? Standard deviation. Standard deviation is how volatile is it? Is it like a yo-yo with a long string or a short string? Someone once said the market behaves like a yo-yo in the hands of a person climbing stairs. Well, if the yo-yo has a short string, then the standard deviation would be low, and a long string, the standard deviation would be high. That's probably the best analogy I could ever dream up in 1,000 years. But it's really how much it deviates from which is the mean, which is the average. R squared says, are these measurements valid? R squared is a way to check on the measurements whether they make sense or not. A high number is generally good and a low number is generally bad on R squared. And then the Sharpe ratio is a way to balance it all. So we're going to talk about all those. These 5 technical risk ratios are all statistical measurements used in modern portfolio theory. And again, it's theory, because most of this theory is based on past performance. So because it did something in the past doesn't necessarily mean it's going to do it in the future. But what else do we have to go on? This racehorse loses every race. You don't bet on him. Track record's terrible. This horse wins every race, you bet on him. Track record is good. Doesn't mean he will. So let's talk more about the definition of alpha. Simply, this is the value a portfolio manager adds or subtracts from a fund's expected return. Alpha compares the volatility, the price risk of a mutual fund to its benchmark, which we've already said. The deviation from the expected return predicted by the capital asset pricing model, called CAPM, is called either positive or negative alpha. Simply, it's the value the manager has or adds or subtracts from a fund's expected rate of return. So you're out there, you're listening to the show, you have some questions about that? Give us a call. Let's talk about it. Do you know what the alpha of your portfolio is? Or maybe there isn't any. 604-280-0650, long distance, 1-877-280-0650. Log on, www.CIL650.com. Free to down at the office, area code 604-737-3512. Long distance, 800-661-1495. Just tuned in? I'm certified financial planner Fred Snyder, also registered financial planner representing Scotia McLeod. We're talking about your money, more importantly about your money, how to keep it, and we have to go to the break, I presume. So we're going to go to the break, and when we come back, we'll continue talking about investment risk. Don't go away.
Fred Snyder.
I want you to imagine a person who is uptight, always worried, has high blood pressure, looking at their bank statement every time they turn around, and it's always red. Okay? They're spending more than they earn. They can't seem to get out of the hole. They're always telling people, I'm catching up, I'm trying to catch up. So they're always behind the 8 ball. And life isn't pretty. And they're not happy and they're frustrated. And they're not even fun to be around, those kind of people. There's a black cloud hanging over their head. Visualize that, because there's lots of people out there right now that are in that boat.
Fred Snyder.
And you have to ask yourself the question right now, what would happen if that happened to me? Because here I am. I'm sitting out here. I don't have a written financial plan. I haven't taken the time to sit down and think about my goals, the things that I really want to accomplish. I'm like a ship without a rudder. I have no direction. I'm procrastinating because I don't know what to do. And I'm still not doing anything about it. So instead of being proactive as I should be, I'm being reactive. I'm waiting for the bad stuff to happen and not controlling my destiny. If that's you, it's time to make a phone call.
Call Fred. Talk to Fred. Listen to Fred. Fred Snyder. Sunday mornings 9 to 11 on CIL 650. This is CISL Vancouver. Smooth and easy. CIL 650. This is It's Your Money on CIL 650. Here once again is Fred Snyder.
Okay, we're back. This is a live show. Forgot to tell you that when we started. Sometimes these are replays, but this is a live one. And again, we welcome your calls. We want to have conversations with you, our listening audience, about your money and how to keep it. How to keep it's the most important part of that, because we don't do a very good job in that area. Again, ask yourself, how long have I worked? How much money have I made? How much of that do I have left? Am I happy with the answers? If you don't have a financial plan, I'm sure, I'll guarantee you're not happy with the answers. Okay? You have to create, you have to build a burning desire to achieve success. You have to motivate yourself. You have to be able to look in the mirror and say, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to wait till tomorrow. I'm not going to procrastinate like all those other people that are out there. I'm going to get myself a financial plan, and I'm going to make it work. I'm going to find myself a financial advisor that's going to guide me along the way. I'm going to be proactive, not reactive. I'm not going to keep making all those mistakes that I've made in the past. I'm going to start anew. So today I begin a new life. Now's the time. Get your future going today. That's what we're talking about. When we went to the break, we were talking about the definition of alpha, which is the value added that a manager adds to a mutual fund or an investment portfolio. Let's talk about beta. Beta is a measure of the volatility or systematic risk of a security or a portfolio in comparison to the market as a whole. What do we mean by the market as a whole? It could be the Dow Jones Industrial Average. It could be the Toronto Stock Exchange. These are markets. It could be NASDAQ, et cetera, et cetera. So which benchmark are you using to compare your investments with? You're investing in Canadian securities, it's probably the Toronto Stock Exchange. If you're investing in American securities, it's either the Dow Jones Industrial Average, maybe Standard & Poor's 500, maybe NASDAQ. Depends on the type of investment. But again, beta is a way to measure volatility, which means how much does my investment fluctuate from the average, which is called the mean. I could really get technical. I'm tempted, but I'm not going to. I'm not trying to show off here, but the bottom line is you don't want to confuse people. They're already too confused. But the bottom line is systematic risk. Systematic risk is market risk. That's what that means. Beta is used in the capital asset pricing model called CAPM as a model that calculates the expected return of an asset based on its beta and expected market returns. It's expected. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed or going to happen. Remember that. It's also known as the beta coefficient. But you have to know, and certainly your financial advisor who's looking after your financial affairs needs to know what is the beta of your investments. A good way to check with your advisor, say, tell me, Joe, what's my beta? What's the beta on my portfolio? What's the beta on that stock that's I'm losing my shirt on? Okay? Because it can be calculated. ProStation is internet-based software which is available to do an X-ray or an MRI or take a GPS on your investment portfolio to be able to look at that portfolio and determine whether that portfolio is suitable for you and your circumstances. What is the expected rate of return on your portfolio? What rate of return do you need to achieve your financial objectives? Let's suppose you need 10% to achieve your financial objectives and the expected return is only 7. Well, you got a problem. Okay? Let's say that you only need 3% and the expected return is 8. Well, maybe you're taking too much risk. You got to balance that. That's what we're talking about. So we break down beta. It's calculated using regression analysis. You can think of beta as the tendency of a security's returns to respond to swings in the market. A beta of 1 indicates that the security's price will move with the market. It will be exactly the same as the market. So if you were to buy an index fund, the beta of that index fund would be 1. A beta of less than 1 means the security will be less volatile than the market. Maybe that's what you want. You don't want something that's bouncing all over the place. A beta greater than 1 indicates that the security's price will be more volatile than the market. So again, what is the beta of your portfolio? What is the beta of the individual securities inside your portfolio? For example, if a stock's beta is 1.2, it's theoretically 20% more volatile than the market. Many utility stocks have a beta of less than 1. Conversely, most high-tech NASDAQ-based stocks have a beta of greater than 1, offering the possibility of a higher rate of return, but also posing more risk. You tell me your tolerance for risk is low, you don't want a stock that has a high beta. You understand that? Any comments? Give us a call. Let's talk about investment risk. That's what it's all about. 604-280-0650. Long distance 877-280-0650. Free to down at the office. If you're shy or reluctant to talk on the air, you want to make an appointment to see myself, you can reach Frida down there at 604-737-3512. Long distance 1-800-661-1495. Once again, I remind you, we're talking to 3 kinds of people. People who don't have a financial plan, people who have one but don't understand it, people who have one, think they understand it, but they want to check up. Just like you go to the doctor, you're pretty healthy, but you still go to the doctor once a year for a checkup. So maybe it's time to get a checkup, maybe a second opinion, just to be sure you're on the right track. That's what we do. We'll sit down, we'll analyze your portfolio, we'll take a look at it, and we'll say this portfolio is going to get you, the likelihood of this portfolio to get you to where you want to go is pretty high, or it's probably not going to get you there. In all likelihood, it's going to fail. You need to know. You need to know that ahead of time because you can't waste time. Standard deviation. That's the measurement of risk. A measure of the dispersion of a set of data from its mean, which is the average. The more spread apart the data, the higher the deviation. Standard deviation is calculated as the square root of the variance. Now, again, I don't square root of the variance. That would scare a lot of people off. Okay? Variance is how much does the data points on a chart vary from the average, which is the mean. Then you take the square root of that and you got standard deviation. In finance, standard deviation is applied to the annual rate of return on an investment to measure the investment's volatility. Standard deviation is also known as historical volatility and is used by investors as a gauge for the amount of expected volatility. And I have a little calculator there where I can click on that and it will calculate if I put the data points in. R squared gets a little more complicated. R-squared is a statistical measure of how close the data is to the fitted regression line. It is also known as the coefficient of determination or the coefficient of multiple determination for multiple regression. Now that's a mouthful. My advice to you, if it scares you, don't worry about it. R-squared, trust your financial advisor. You can find one you can trust and say, what's R-squared? Is my R-squared number, is it a good one? It can be as high as 100, it can be as low as 0. A high number means the data is probably pretty accurate. How do I interpret R-squared and access the goodness of fit? After you find a linear model using regression analysis, you need to determine how well the model fits the data. To help you out, Minitab statistical software presents a variety of goodness of fit statistics. At this point, we'll explore the R-square statistic, some of the limitations, and uncover some surprises along the way. For instance, low R-squared values are not always bad, and high R-squared values are not always good. Most of the time, high is good, low is bad. Most of the time, but not all the time. So again, R-squared is a way to just kind of check on the mathematics. If R-squared comes out and it's a high number, it says that the conclusions drawn from the statistical information are probably accurate. And again, the higher the better. In general, the higher the R-squared, the better the model fits your data. Plotting fitted values by observed values graphically illustrates different R-squared models. The regression model on the left accounts for 38% of the variance, while the one on the right accounts for 87.4%. But again, you want to remember something on this one? Just the higher, the better. It can be as high as 100, as low as 0. So let's talk about the Sharpe ratio. This is a good one. The Sharpe ratio is a measure for calculating risk-adjusted return. So you say, well, my portfolio returned 30%. But let's adjust that 30% for risk. It only returned 30% because the risk was extremely high and you were lucky. So you got to calculate the risk associated with that rate of return, and that's called the Sharpe ratio. It's become the industry standard for such calculations. It was developed by Nobel laureate William F. Sharpe. The Sharpe ratio is the average return earned in excess of the risk-free rate per unit of volatility or total risk. Risk-free is like a treasury bill. So the definition of the Sharpe ratio is a measure for calculating risk-adjusted return, and the ratio has become the industry standard. Subtracting the risk-free rate from the mean return, the performance associated with risk-taking activities can be isolated. One intuition of this calculation is that a portfolio engaged in zero-risk investments, such as the purchase of U.S. Treasury bills, for which the expected return is the risk-free rate, has a Sharpe ratio of exactly 0. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, listeners out there, give us a call, 604-280-0650, long distance 1-877-280-0650. Log on, www.CIL650.com. Free to down at the office, 604-737-3512. Long distance, 800-661-1495. Let's talk to Emma from Vancouver. Emma, welcome to the program. Hello, Emma.
Oh, yes.
Hi, Emma. You're on the air.
Yes. I have a question. Do you know anyone reliable who checks out old shares or old investments?
We can do that for you.
I have some stuff from that was bought 1969, 1970.
Well, any good broker can do that. I mean, I can do that for you. All you got to do is give Frida a call and make an appointment. Come and see me or send me the information.
Most brokers don't do it themselves. They recommend somebody else who will do it. So, do you know anybody?
Well, I do it myself.
Sorry?
I'm quite happy to do it myself.
You do it?
Sure.
Okay. And you would need the information and
Of course, yeah. I need the information on the securities themselves. Not promise you that I can get the information, but I know how to go about it. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks very much.
So give Frida a call. You can reach Frida at 604-737-3512. She's there right now.
Thank you so much.
Emma, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your call.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, if you just tuned in, Emma's line is now open. So again, you have a question, you have a comment about what we're talking about, have a comment or a question regarding risk. We're talking about the importance of managing risk or mitigating risk inside your portfolio. There is no investment which is absolutely 100% risk-free. You say, well, I can buy Canada savings bonds. They don't have any risk. Yes, they do. You buy some Canada savings bonds, put them under your mattress, lock them up in a vault. 10 years from now, they'll only buy maybe half of what they'll buy today because of inflation. That's risk. Your money loses purchasing power. Government increases taxation. It used to charge you maybe 40% or 30% tax on your investments. The increased tax is now 50%. That's risk. Okay? So it doesn't matter what it is. There's always a degree of risk. Your job is to manage risk. And risk is managed by diversification. So you diversify, diversify, diversify. You don't bet the farm on any one thing. You don't bet the farm on energy like the case study that we did earlier. Well over half that portfolio, percentage-wise, is invested in energy. That's crazy. Okay? Even when energy was doing well. Because things change. Whoever would have thought that the price of oil would decline from over $100 a barrel to what is it, around 40 now? Down $60 a barrel, down 60%. Why do you think the Canadian dollar is only $1.75 if it's that today? What happened? Well, 30% of Canada's economy is energy. So it costs $67 to get a barrel of oil out of the ground in the tar sands that you can sell for $40. Why would we produce oil at a loss? Saudi Arabia, $17 to get a barrel of oil out of the ground that they can still sell for $40. No wonder they're flooding the markets, because they want to drive all the competition out while they're getting as good. That's what they're doing. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. So if your portfolio is high in energy, you should phone your financial advisor and say, what percentage of my portfolio is invested in energy? If you're a client of mine, I can tell you exactly how much energy exposure that you actually have. And I'm not going to guarantee that energy isn't going to come roaring back tomorrow. I can't tell you that the Arabs aren't going to shut down the pipelines and start choking up on oil right now and decreasing the supply. I can't tell you that's going to happen. But I think it's a pretty good bet that it's not going to. And that's what we're talking about. So once again, 604-280-0650. Long distance, 877-280-0650. Log on, www.CIL650.com. And always remember, if you're shy or reluctant to talk on the air, remember that Frida is down at the office to help you. You can reach Frida right now at area code 604-737-3512. The long distance, 800-661-1495. You've just tuned in. I'm certified financial planner Fred Snyder, also registered financial planner representing Scotia McLeod. And my mission is to teach people what they need to know to make better financial decisions. Now, what you need to give yourself a pretty good chance of achieving the success that you're looking for is a financial plan. Then you need a financial planner to be your coach, to develop that plan for you, to make sure that you're on track. And last, you need the best financial products that are out there inside your plan. So how do you discover the best financial products that exist? Well, you need to have an advisor that knows how to analyze and find the best products. You need an advisor that knows how to use the tools that exist within our industry to help find those investments, and the tools to make sure that those investments keep on being the best investments that are available. There's 22,000 investment funds available in Canada, approximately. I build portfolios out of 10 of the 22,000. And the 10 that I use are the best funds, performance-wise, over the last 5 years. Not last year, the last 5 years. Because something might have returned 100% last year, and every other year it was terrible. Okay? So you want to use 5 years as a way to measure the performance. Because you got some bad years in there and some good years. And it covers the waterfront. So again, you just tuned in. I'm certified financial planner Fred Snyder, also registered financial planner representing Scotia McLeod, and I encourage you to give us a call with your comments. Generally, and I have to say this before I close off on the Sharpe ratio, the greater the value of the Sharpe ratio, the more attractive the risk-adjusted return. So a higher number is better. So if you want to compare two investments with two different Sharpe ratios, the one with a higher Sharpe ratio is the better investment. You need to know that, and most people don't. So let's continue a little bit with the Sharpe ratio. It's become the most widely used method for calculating risk-adjusted returns. Remember, once again, risk-adjusted returns. Risk, that's what we're talking about. It can be inaccurate when applied to portfolios or assets that do not have a normal distribution of expected returns. Many assets have a high degree of kursosis, called fat tails or negative skewedness. The Sharpe ratio also tends to fail when analyzing portfolios with significant nonlinear risks. That's getting too complicated. Okay? Bottom line is, the higher the number, the better. Ask your financial advisor, you're going to switch this fund for that fund, which has the better Sharpe ratio. You need to know how to talk to your advisor. That's part of the game. Alternative measures. Many have emerged over the years. We have the Sortino ratio, return over maximum drawdown, and the Trainer ratios. It's just getting too complicated right now. We have correlation. What does this mean? Well, look, let's suppose you have two investments. When one investment goes up, the other goes down, historically. They run opposite to each other. The one that goes down, that's called negative correlation. The one that goes up is called positive correlation. What you really want to do is have an investment portfolio where there's a balance between negative and positive correlation. That actually reduces risk. Because if you have two securities, one that goes down by 25%, one that goes up by 25%, running opposite to each other, the average of the two is a straight line. Okay? So if you got 10, that's the name of the game. So investment advisors, investment portfolio managers are always trying to balance the investment portfolio based on correlation. So again, you should ask your advisor, what's the correlation of my investments? Modern portfolio theory states that adding assets to a diversified portfolio that have correlations of less than 1 with each other can decrease portfolio risk without sacrificing return. Very, very important principle. Such diversification will serve to increase the Sharpe ratio of a portfolio. So that ties it back to Sharpe ratio. Correlation and Sharpe ratio. Here's the formula for the Sharpe ratio. The Sharpe ratio equals the mean portfolio return minus the risk-free rate divided by standard deviation. That's the formula. Applications of the Sharpe ratio. The Sharpe ratio is often used to compare the change in a portfolio's overall risk-return characteristics when a new asset or asset class is added to it. For example, a portfolio manager is considering adding a hedge fund allocation to his existing 50-50 investment portfolio of stocks, which has a Sharpe ratio of 0.67. If the new portfolio allocation is 40-40-20 stocks, bonds, and a diversified hedge fund allocation, perhaps a fund of funds, the Sharpe ratio increases to 87. So the question is that a good thing or a bad thing? Remember I said the higher the number, the better? So that's a good thing. This indicates that although the hedge fund investment is risky as a standalone exposure, it actually improves the risk-return characteristic of the combined portfolio and thus adds a diversification benefit. So it's not as easy as you thought, right? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have to go to the break. And when we come back, we'll talk some more about your money and how to keep it. Don't go away.
Fred Snyder.
Do you have a GPS? I do. I have one in my boat. I have one in my car. I get in my car, I can turn the GPS on, put an address in, it'll tell me exactly how to get there. When I'm in my boat, I can say I want to go to Anvil Island, and my boat will take me right there every time. Wouldn't it be nice to have a financial plan that would do the same thing?
Fred Snyder.
When you sit down with a financial advisor, such as myself, I have to determine the level of risk that you need to take and the level of risk that you're able to take and the level of risk that you want to take and the way to get the best return on your investments. That's what your financial plan is all about.
Fred Snyder.
I just really appreciate and honor what you do every week for people, is giving them financial knowledge, so I'm just really happy about that. Just keep on doing the awesome work, Fred.
Fred Snyder.
So three kinds of people: those who really don't have a plan, they're just kind of starting out, those who are on the way, and those who feel they're already there. The three types of people. And those who are already there, maybe you need to get a second opinion on that portfolio, that you have to make sure that it's the right one, or maybe you have to tweak the plan itself. That's what we're talking about. If you fall into any of those categories, time to make a phone call.
Call Fred. Listen to Fred. Fred Snyder. Sunday mornings 9 to 11 on CIL 650. Welcome back to It's Your Money on CIL 650. If you have a question for Fred, call 604-280-0650. Now, back to Fred.
Okay, we're back. Remind you once again, ladies and gentlemen, we're live. We take your calls. We reward you for making calls. Fabulous Napoleon Hill workbook from Think and Grow Rich. All you got to do is make a call. We'll make sure you get a copy of it. Call free to make an appointment. Come in and see me. We'll give you a second opinion on your investment portfolio in writing. We'll develop a written financial plan for you at absolutely no cost or obligation. We'll analyze your whole situation, and basically, maybe you want to become a client, we'll look after you. We'll help you achieve financial success. That's what we do. When we went to the break, we were talking about the Sharpe ratio, indicating that although a hedge fund investment is risky as a standalone, if you bought it all by itself, it's risky, but it actually improves the risk-return characteristics of a combined portfolio and thus adds a diversification benefit. If the addition of the new investment lowered the Sharpe ratio, it should not be added to the portfolio. So you can measure it. Like I said earlier, Peter Drucker says that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So you need tools to be able to measure what's going on. I see it all the time, and it's not happening. It's not happening for most people. They have an investment advisor that doesn't take these issues into account. So you want a second opinion on your investment portfolio, a written financial plan, see it at our next workshop. Want to get your future going today? Make a phone call. That's all you have to do. That's the cost of success. So if you just tuned in, I'm certified financial planner Fred Snyder, also registered financial planner representing Scotia McLeod. We're talking about your money, more importantly about your money and how to keep it. So again, Sharpe ratio uses. I got a fellow here walking a tightrope. Maybe that's the market. And on one side you got risk, on the other side you got reward. That's the balance between the two. Visualize that, if you will. Visualize yourself on a tightrope or on a roller coaster or whatever you want to do, and consider that roller coaster to be the investment market itself, the Toronto Stock Exchange, Dow Jones Industrial Average. And picture yourself on that path, walking that tightrope with a balancing rod in your arms, one representing risk on one side, the other reward on the other. There's a balance between risk and reward. The greater the risk, the greater the reward. Got to think about that. If you increase risk, if you increase reward, you decrease risk, or increase risk, I should say. The two go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. It's like love and marriage. The Sharpe ratio can also help explain whether a portfolio's excess returns are due to smart investment decisions or the result of too much risk. Due to smart investment decisions or the result of too much risk. My investment advisor did a great job. He made me 30% last year. Oh, was he lucky? Is that why? Maybe he took a lot of risk and was lucky. Need to be able to measure that. Although one portfolio or fund can enjoy higher returns than its peers, it is only a good investment if those higher returns do not come with an excess of additional risk. That's not what you want. The greater a portfolio's Sharpe ratio, the better its risk-adjusted performance has been. So again, if the Sharpe ratio is high, that's good. If it's low, not so good. A negative Sharpe ratio indicates that a risk-less asset would perform better than the security being analyzed. And then we have the Sortino ratio, which is the portfolio return minus the target return divided by the downside risk. That's downside standard deviation. It's a modification of the Sharpe ratio that differentiates harmful volatility from general volatility by taking into account the standard deviation of negative asset returns called downside deviation. I don't know if we really need to know that too much, but it's there. Sortino ratio subtracts the risk-free rate of return from the portfolio return and then divides that by the downside deviation. So it's similar to Sharpe, but a little more refined. A large Sortino ratio indicates there is a low probability of a large loss. So that would be the reason for using it. So again, we've talked a lot about measuring risk. So if we look at the risk ratios, we've talked about alpha, we've talked about beta, we've talked about standard deviation, we've talked about R squared, we talked about the Sharpe ratio. There's 5 of them, and we also just talked about the Sortino ratio. So you're out there, you're listening to the show, you have some comments, they would be much appreciated. Get on the line and give us a call. We'll reward you for making that call by giving you this great Napoleon Hill workbook, and I would suggest that everybody get it. And maybe you feel you don't need it for yourself, but how about your son that needs to be motivated? How about your daughter that needs to be motivated? Or how about your grandchildren? Share this information with everybody. Napoleon Hill wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. And in there he says that anything you can vividly imagine, ardently desire, and enthusiastically act upon will inevitably come to pass. You have to believe you can. You have to have the confidence that you can achieve success. I learned a long time ago that the 5 steps in achieving success is that number 1, you crystallize your thinking, which means you have very, very well-defined specific goals that you can actually visualize. If you say, I want to be rich, it's not good enough. It's not clear enough. How do you visualize rich? Maybe I think of rich, I think of Scrooge McDuck's swimming around in all those gold coins. Okay? Maybe that's rich. Poor. I visualize somebody with empty pockets, moths flying out. That's poor. I visualize looking at a bank statement that shows nothing but overdrafts, collection notices in the mailbox. Rich, I visualize a check that comes every month in my pocket, in my breast pocket. And I look at it and I say, I can spend this money, and I know next month I'm going to get another one, and the month after that another one. And these checks are going to come as long as I live. I visualize multiple streams of income. So I look at a whole bunch of taps, turn them on, and money comes out of every one of those taps. So how can you see your financial future? You can't see it unless you have well-defined, very specific financial goals. So what you do is crystallize your thinking. Sit down and make a list of all the things that you want to achieve. Not just money, everything. Health and wealth, they go hand in hand. Spiritual life, financial life, social life. Make a list of goals. You don't know how to do it? Phone the show and you get the book. The workbook will guide you into doing all this. God, you can't make it any easier than this. It's a $34 value. All you got to do is make a phone call. So I'll give the numbers out once again. 604-280-0650. Long distance, 877-280-0650. You want to see what we look like? www.CL650.com. And Frida's down at the office right now, 604-737-3512. Long distance, 800-661-1495. I'm certified financial planner Fred Snyder, talking to you about your money and how to keep it. So once again, you don't have a financial plan, you're planning to fail. Fix the situation by getting one. Make a phone call. You have a financial plan, but you don't understand it? Time to get one that's a little more simpler, and maybe have the one that you already have explained. I've seen many of them, and I basically say, look, do you understand this? And they say, no. Okay, and then there are those high net worth individuals that have a good solid financial plan, but they're not sure. They think, well, maybe I should just get a checkup. My financial advisor hasn't called me in 3 years, even though I have a financial plan. Maybe it's time to find a financial advisor that will call me on a regular basis and review my plan. 3 types of people. No plan, don't understand the plan they have if they have one, want to be sure that the one they have is the right one. Make a phone call. Frida down at the office, 604-737-3512. Long distance, 800-661-1495. Want to call me on my cell phone? 644-7526. That's 644-PLAN. So if you call that number after the show, not right now, I can take your call. And maybe you got a question or a comment. Maybe you want to book an appointment. No problem at all. Okay? Get on the line and give us a call. Once again, 604-280-0650. Long distance, 877-280-0650. Log on, www.cl650.com. Frida down at the office, area code 604-737-3512. Long distance, 800-661-1495. Now, when I give those numbers out, maybe you were driving and you missed the first one. I'm going to give it out just quickly once again. 604-280-0650. Once again, give us a call. Remind you we're talking about your money, more importantly about your money and how to keep it. If you're over on the island, I'll be over on the island next week. Be able to go over there and talk to you at the Coast Bastion Hotel, I believe. I'm not sure. Clarify that with Frida. I think they had a flood or something over there on the second floor. So it might not be, but Frida will know. I think it's next week. So once again, 604-737-3512. So the key thing to focus on is the fact that you need to deal with the reasons for financial failure. Fear. What is it that you're afraid of? If you take the word fear, it's really an acronym. And the word fear, F-E-A-R, stands for false evidence appearing real. Why is it that you don't have a financial plan? What is preventing you from getting one when there's no cost or no obligation? What is stopping you? What's the obstacle that's blocking you from getting to where you want to go? I once took a course one time, a management course, and it essentially said, it was entitled Problem Solving. So it defined a problem as a barrier. The problem is a barrier. So in order to have a problem situation, you need a goal. And you need to be where you're at right now. And between you and the goal, there's an obstacle. That's the problem. So what obstacle is preventing you from achieving the financial success that you would like to achieve? First off, I ask you this question. Where are you going to be when you're 65? Do you know? Are you going to be rich? Are you going to be poor? Are you going to be financially independent? Are you going to be living with your kids? Where are you going to stand down the road? Let's say you're 40 years of age right now. And someday you're going to be 65, whether you like it or not. And 70. And maybe someday you're going to die. Not maybe, you're probably going to, for sure. But let's say you're 40 now and you become 65. And then I want you to visualize yourself at age 65 looking back at the 40-year-old you are right now. If you don't do a good job of looking after that 65-year-old person, the 65-year-old person in the future is going to hate you today. Going to say, why didn't you look after me? You got to send some money ahead for that particular reason. Let's talk to Judy from Vancouver Island. Judy, welcome to the program.
Hi, Fred.
Hi, Judy. How are you?
I'm good. My question is, you talk about people making $100,000 a year, needing a financial plan, which makes sense. But you don't talk much about the people that are within, say, the 25 to 50,000 a year.
Well, maybe I should. Thanks for pointing that out.
I'm just whether they need a financial plan too, right?
Everybody needs a financial plan.
Right.
I can make a case.
I'm thinking that, sure, if you make $100,000, it's easy to put away, 20, 30,000.
Judy, I talk to lots of $100,000 earners that don't put any money away. They're as big a financial failures as some of the people that are only making $30,000.
But maybe discuss the lower income people.
Sure.
Sometimes.
Well, I agree with you.
Okay, great.
I don't have any issues there at all.
Okay.
And pardon me for not emphasizing the fact that I can make a case out of the fact that you can take a newborn baby. You could design a financial plan for a newborn baby.
Yeah.
Because the financial plan would say the newborn baby is going to go to college and is going to need this X amount of dollars when that happens. And when they finish college, they're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, or whatever. It might be a little early in the game to be doing it, but you can make a case for making a financial plan for anybody, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Even somebody that's 100 years of age.
Right.
Okay.
Good.
The day is coming, likely coming anyway. We're going to live to be 120.
Yeah.
Okay. And if our money runs out when we're 90, we're going to be broke for 30 years.
Yep. No, I agree. I have a financial plan. I'm good, but I'm just I listen to your show every Sunday, and I often think, well, you talk like high-end people. Well,
I'm sorry. That was not my intention.
There's a lot of people out there that don't have a lot and maybe are living from payday to payday. I thought your point about putting 10 cents out of every dollar away was a good one, because maybe even the person, on a low income could afford that, right?
I think just about anybody, like I've used this example before, and someone once said that maybe you shouldn't be beating up on people that smoke cigarettes so much. But the bottom line is that even the poorest people on the street can find money to buy cigarettes if they want to.
Yep.
It does somehow, because they can buy their cigarettes regularly as they need them. Like it costs $10 to buy a package of cigarettes. And if you're poor, it probably costs $10 because you don't pay tax. But if you're in a 50% tax bracket, it costs $20 to buy a package of cigarettes because they're not tax deductible. If there's 30 days in a month, that's $600 a month in before tax dollars going to pay for cigarettes. If you're in the low tax bracket, it's about $300 a month. But the point that I'm trying to make is whether you have the money or not, somehow you can find a way to find the money to buy cigarettes. So if you want to save money systematically and you want to do it badly enough, if you're obsessed about it enough, you can find 10 cents a day.
Right.
If you get $1, if you have $1 of income and you take 10 cents out of that and put it aside and budget for the other 90 cents, you're still going to make ends meet.
Mhm. Yeah. That's good.
I once had a lady who worked in an army barracks as a cook, and she had an investment portfolio of about $900,000, and she was in her late 60s. And I said, you never made very much money during your lifetime. How did you accumulate all this money? And she said to me, I paid myself first. I always paid myself first, which is exactly what we're talking about.
Mhm. Mhm.
Someone once said, start in a small way if you like, but start. 10 cents isn't much.
Right? Your desire.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we're talking about. You got to have that burning desire. You have to be obsessed. Show me somebody who's obsessed about accumulating money, and I'll show you somebody who's on their way to be successful or is already successful financially.
Mhm.
You got to want to. It's got to be a burning desire. So in order to have that desire, you have to have the crystallized thinking of all your goals. You have to be able to see everything you want to achieve in crystal clear picture of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just read your book. I bought 2 of them for my grandson.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Judy, wonderful.
Okay. Thanks, Fred.
You take care. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Okay. Now that is like what I just love to hear. She bought 2 for her grandchildren, and she read the book. It's fantastic. So we got, we're in the process of defining 5 steps. One of them is crystallize your thinking. That means setting goals. But the step number 2 is you have to develop written plans and deadlines. They have to be in writing. Now, how do you do step 2? You get the book, the Think and Grow Rich book. That will almost be automatic. That's step 2. Step 3 is that you now kindle desire. You create a burning desire to achieve the goals that you've already set. So you've laid all these goals out on paper. Sit back, close your eyes, and visualize yourself having already achieved these goals. You will be motivating yourself. Use affirmations to achieve these goals. Say to yourself, I'm going to do this. Muhammad Ali used to say, I am the greatest, and he believed it. Okay? Let's talk to Stan from White Rock. Stan, welcome to the program. Hi, Stan.
Hi.
How you doing, Stan? You're on the air.
Okay. Yeah. I would like to know what is the total limit available in the TFSA at this time.
41,000 per year.
How much?
41,000 per year per spouse.
21,000?
41.
Or 31?
No, 40. 41.
No, 41. Sorry. My radio is not so clear. My hearing is not so good.
No problem. It's $41,000 per year. So if you have a wife or a spouse, it's $82,000 all told.
No, I don't have a spouse, but I have a daughter who's not too good at keeping her money.
Mm-hmm.
She and her husband are making fair money, but they are still in a debt to a mortgage.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, the bottom line is that you can have, based on the amount, the increase of TFSA this year from up to $10,000 from $5,500. So now you can put up to $10,000 a year going forward into a TFSA, and if you've never had one, the accumulated previous contributions, which can be carried over, would allow you to put $41,000 into a TFSA. If you're married and you have a partner, it's $41,000 each. That's $82,000, earning investment income, which is absolutely income tax free forever and a day.
So each spouse is entitled to the $41,000.
That's correct.
Okay, sir.
Now, how old is your daughter?
She's 54.
So she could have a TFSA. She's never had one.
No, she hasn't.
That's $41,000 for her too.
Okay.
So you can be looking at a family. You can be talking about an awful lot of money.
Yes, it is. Well, she's in debt. She hasn't got that kind of money.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to get her on the right track, and I enjoy your program. And
thank you.
And I feel that information that you afford free, I would be able to hand it to her.
Yes.
And have her look.
Sure. And the best way to trigger that, Stan, would be to call Frida. Frida's down at the office right now. You can reach Frida at area code 604-737-3512. 604-737-3512.
Okay.
Call Frida, and I'd love to talk to you again. You take care.
I shall do that.
Okay, enjoy the rest of the weekend. Bye for now.
Thank you very much. I enjoy your program.
Thanks a lot. Let's talk to Ron from White Rock. Ron, welcome to the program.
How you doing today, Fred?
Pretty good. How are you?
Oh, can't complain. I'm still above the ground. No?
That's good.
I'm not riding anymore, but I'm enjoying life. And what that lady said about, and you said about people can always find money for cigarettes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have to they can't find the money for investing.
That's
well,
right.
Just in that perspective, I still find the money because I take my old age pension, which I get $500 or $550, and I invest $400 still every month.
Well, there you go.
I'm getting a good income from my other stuff, from your son. And
Yeah.
he's doing a great job.
So you're dealing with my son Stephen.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
he's with Hollis, which is part of the Scotia Group.
Yeah.
So we're all in the same family.
He's doing all good.
He does a good job. I'm proud of him.
He does. And I can't say nothing but good things about him.
Yeah, he's a good boy.
And but I was just wanted to make a comment that you can find the money if you want to.
Yeah, well, there's no question about that. Really, it's a fact.
Yeah.
I learned when I first started in this business, and I've been around a good many years in this business,
and I've talked to a long time still.
A lot of people over the years. I'm from Ottawa originally, but the bottom line is that I was taught this: you pay yourself first.
Right.
Start in a small way if you like, but start. These are all cliches.
Yeah.
The company I work for came up with. But the idea was systematic savings. You know, in the old days, somebody used to say, well, we can't save any money.
Yeah.
And I had this bank that I would give them, a date bank. It had a date on it. In order to change the date, you had to put 2 quarters in it, 50 cents.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's $1 a day.
You're right.
And I said, well, okay, you take this bank, and I'll come back in a month, and you'll have $30 in there.
Yeah.
Give me the $30, I'll invest it for you.
Well,
this is in the old days, and it worked.
Oh, it sure works, but you got to want to do it.
Yeah.
And like I say, I still save. Even every time I come home, I go every morning to A&W for breakfast. When I come home, I put whatever change I have in a piggy bank.
Yeah.
And I have a little bad story for you today about what happened to me last Sunday. I had a tenant in Richmond when I lived in Richmond, and I used to borrow her money, when she needed it, and she was a single mother. I bought groceries for her when I went shopping,
Yep.
Helped her, And then they came to visit, her and her boyfriend came to visit me last Sunday. And I made them some tea and some cookies and stuff. And then I showed her boyfriend my shed outside, because I live in a mobile home. The shed is outside. So she went to the washroom inside the house, and I had my piggy bank. And I come and look at my piggy bank after they left, and I had a roll of bills with elastic around it, and it's gone.
Oh, my God.
I said, what the hell's going on? I said, because I check my piggy bank every morning. Like, in the morning, I take out change for my breakfast, okay? And then that morning, after breakfast, I went and checked my lotto ticket, and I won 11 big dollars. So I took $6, and I bought another lotto ticket for the next time. And I had $5 left. I come home, I took that little wrapped around elastic, I put that $5 around the other little bit of money, and put the elastic back, put it back in the piggy bank. And we were the only ones in the place. And I phoned her, and she said she didn't touch nothing, but it's gone. I said, isn't that, well, but I can't prove anything, you see?
Oh, yeah.
The only thing I have is I know it's not there anymore. And it was about $85. And, I tried to save a few dollars here, a few dollars there with the change. And then when it comes to a dollar bill, I change it into $1 or $2 or $5. I had about $85 and a little bit of American money in there. So it's so bad advertising, I'm not going to mention any names, but they know who it is. And but that's what happens. So I'm starting all over again now. But you can find the money if you really want to do it. You got to be a little bit aggressive,
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, I don't want to take too much of your time. You have a great day, and you're doing a great job.
Well, Ron, thank you very much. I really appreciate the compliment.
No problem. Well, you deserve it.
Okay.
And keep your health going.
Okay, I will. You take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Okay, Ron from White Rock, that line is now open. I've known Ron for a good many years, and we do have to go to the break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about 5 ways to save on income tax when it comes to investing. Don't go away.
Because the name of the game is to create cash flow.
Fred Snyder.
So just visualize yourself. If you want to go to Hawaii every year, you're lying on the beach, you can feel the hot sun beating down on your back. You get up, you take a walk, you can feel the hot sand crunch between your toes, you hear the waves lapping on the beach, the seagulls circling overhead. You got to be able to visualize all this. And this is not just for you, this is for anybody else that's out there listening to the show. You have to motivate yourself. And the way you motivate yourself is being able to visualize yourself enjoying your objectives, as I just did.
And that's why I'm calling you.
Okay?
Fred Snyder.
That's the key, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how you can afford to pursue and enjoy your hopes, your plans, your dreams, and your ambitions. That's what we're talking about.
Fred Snyder.
If you have a financial plan and you're somewhere in the middle and you're wondering what tweaks that you should make in that plan to make it what you really want it to be, time to make a phone call. Or if maybe you're just getting started out and you want to get a starter plan, maybe it's time to talk to somebody like myself and get yourself on the right track.
Call Fred. Listen to Fred. Fred Snyder. Sunday mornings 9 to 11 on CIL 650. This is CISL Vancouver. Smooth and easy.
CIL 650.
You're listening to It's Your Money on CIL 650. Once again, here is Fred Snyder.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, listeners out there, we are back. And we're back to talk to you about 5 different ways to save on taxes when it comes to investing. And we did talk about one of them when we were talking about the TFSA. That's probably the best way of all to save money. You know that when you buy the house you live in and you own it, if it appreciates in value, that's tax-free. A TFSA, to buy a TFSA, if it appreciates in value, that's tax-free. The only problem is you don't get nearly as much money into that as you do in the house, because there's limits on the TFSA. And you got to know what the limits are, because if you over-contribute, there's penalties. But I took this out of the Sun the other day, Vancouver Sun, and 5 ways to save tax. One of them is buy stocks with no income and don't sell them. That's step 1. With all the focus on income and dividend yields, we sometimes forget one of the reasons that some companies pay no dividends. They actually believe that reinvesting in the company is more valuable than giving the cash to shareholders. You want to think about that for a minute. okay? The tax benefit is that you have no income to report each year. So no dividends, no income to report. The best Canadian example would be CGI Group. The stock pays no dividend, but the share price is up over 200% over the last 5 years. If you bought and held this stock, you would have reported zero in investment income, even if you had $1 million in the stock. Nothing to report. In the U.S., examples would be Chipotle Mexican Grill, which has 0% dividend and is up 311% over the 5 years. Another name might be Amur, another stock with a 0% dividend, is up more than 700% over 5 years. So basically, you want to find yourself a stock that doesn't pay dividends. And there's some mutual funds that don't pay dividends if you want managed money. The downside is that if the stock is not doing well, you don't even have a regular dividend to keep your company. But the bottom line is, buy stocks with no income. It's a consideration. It's not a recommendation, but it's something that you should take a hard, long look at. You want to save tax? That's one way to save tax. Focus on capital gains and qualified dividends in taxable accounts. So if it's not an RRSP, it's a cash account, the top marginal tax rate in Ontario starts with income over $220,000. Above that income, interest is taxed at 49.5%. Capital gains at half that rate, 24.8%, and eligible dividends generally from publicly traded corporations at 33.8%. In Alberta, at roughly $138,000, the marginal tax rate is 40% on interest, 20% on dividends, and 20% on capital gains. Even though Alberta rates are much lower today, they are changes coming at the top, and that will likely narrow the gap between Alberta and Ontario tax rates. Using the Ontario example, interest from savings amounts or accounts, bonds and GICs would be taxed at 49.5%. That's might as well say 50%. Dividends from eligible Canadian corporation stocks and preferred shares would be taxed at 33.8%, and dividends from non-Canadian companies would be taxed at 49.5%. Capital gains are treated the same whether they are from Canadian or foreign investments. So it is generally a good idea for you to try to hold too many interest-producing or dividend-paying stocks from foreign companies in your taxable account. So the bottom line is, if you have interest income, which is being taxed on an annual basis, then you should be looking at corporations instead of owning shares in those corporations, instead of lending the money to them and getting interest income. So focus on capital gains and qualified dividends in taxable accounts. Invest taxable money where it won't be taxed. So let's suppose that you have interest income and you can't have it any other way, GICs or whatever. Put that money inside your RRSP. At least it's tax deferred. Or put it into your TFSA. Then you'll never pay any tax at all. So in other words, if you're paying tax on interest income, ask yourself the question, can this be shifted to something that pays capital gains and dividends? Or can this be shifted into my RRSP or my TFSA? That's what you need to think about. And maybe you need to talk to your financial advisor, somebody like myself, in this particular case, and get some advice. Use corporate class funds to receive better tax treatment. So let's say that you have some investments in a certain investment fund corporation, maybe like McKinsey or somebody like that. You have some investments in there, and you want to switch them. So when you switch them, it creates a capital gain. If you use corporate class accounts, that won't happen. You won't trigger taxes if you use corporate class funds. So that is something as well to consider. The last one, and you know, I have 64 different ways to do all this. I'm talking about 5 right now. Spousal loans at 1%. You got to remember, you can lend money to your spouse, and your spouse can invest the money. And if that happens, the income from that invested money is taxable to you. You haven't been able to do a proper, effective income splitting arrangement. You haven't been able to accomplish what you're really trying to accomplish because of the rules of attribution. So if you loan money to your spouse, interest-free, you got a problem. You're supposed to charge interest, but you can actually do it at 1%, which makes it worthwhile. So a spousal loan at 1% is a good idea, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. With interest rates being so low, you wait till interest rates get back up, and then the imputed rate at CRA becomes much greater. You can make those loans at 1% right now, lock it in, and it's a good idea to do. So income splitting is a way to save tax. That's what we're talking about. So any questions, any comments, any feedback on what we've been talking about? We've been talking about 5 ways to save tax. That was in yesterday's Vancouver Sun, right out of there. So 604-737-3512, that's the number to reach Frida at, 604-737-3512. Long distance, 800-661-1495. You want to talk live? You want to get that free workbook? 604-280-0650. Long distance, 1-877-280-0650. Log on, www.CIL650.com. Frida down at the office. Once again, 604-737-3512. That's the action number. You want to make something happen, you call Frida. Frida will book an appointment. So 604-737-3512. You're over on the island, you want to see me when I'm over there, you want more details on that, call Frida as well. Once again, 604-737-3512. You're calling from the island long distance, it's 1-800-661-1495. Once again, we're talking about your money, more importantly about your money and how to keep it. And I remind you once again that you need a plan. You need a planner, and you need the best products. I call those the 3 P's. First P stands for plan, the second P stands for planning or planner, and the last P stands for the best products. If you're missing all 3, the chances are your plan is less than 100% effective. So you want to be effective, you get yourself a proper investment plan, a proper financial plan, and the most important part of the whole thing is to make sure you have suitable investment products. Suitable means there isn't too much risk. The rate of return is the rate of return you need to achieve your objectives. And the certainty or the chances of achieving that return are very high. That's what you're looking for. You need a financial advisor. I'm available. You want a second opinion? Give Frida a call, book an appointment. Once again, 604-737-3512. Let's create a burning desire. Remember once again the words of Napoleon Hill. Anything, I said anything, you can vividly imagine. Anything you can vividly imagine, vividly, ardently desire, believe you can achieve, and enthusiastically act upon will inevitably come to pass. You want to make that happen? Get the workbook. The workbook will be your guide. You want to get the book Think and Grow Rich? You got Google, it's a free download. I often tell the story of Henry Ford. I'm sure everybody knows who Henry Ford is, don't have to explain that. But Henry Ford used to have what he called his mastermind. And the Chicago Tribune criticized him roundly for being uneducated, opinionated, and way out of line with everything he said and did at the time, even though he was very successful. So he sued them. And in court, under cross-examination, they asked him a whole bunch of questions. And he technically refused to answer them. After he got about a dozen questions, he stood up and he said, look, Do you really think that I have to carry this useless knowledge around in my head? I use my mind for better things. I'm not interested in when the First World War started, because that was then. That was in the mid-30s. I'm not interested in that. And if I need information, on my desk I have 15 buttons. The first button says accountant. I reach out, I push that button, my accountant comes in. And I said to my accountant, give me some information about this or that, and he gives it to me. Don't have to worry about it. Don't have to memorize it. Second button says lawyer. Push that button, my lawyer comes in. Same thing. Push another button, my engineers come in. And so on and so on and so on. So I have 15 different specialists that I surround myself with, and I call that my mastermind. We get together once every couple of weeks or so, and we discuss all kinds of things. And as I'm reading this, it strikes me, it dawns on me, today we have the best mastermind of all, and it's called Google. You got thousands of buttons. Have you ever done a research project where you went to the library and you got the microfiche out and you looked up the articles in different papers, then you went to the photocopier and you copied them, then you took them home and you typed them all out neatly, and it took a tremendous amount of effort to do a research project? I did that. I've done that. Today you don't have to do that. In fact, you don't even have to go to the library. You don't even have to leave your desk. You're sitting at your desk, you got your laptop in front of me, you call up Internet Explorer, you load up Google, you type your question. The information comes back from 1,000 different sources or more. You cut and paste all the information into your word processor. You don't even have to type a keystroke. You push a button and it prints it out, a hard copy. You can actually write a book that way. It's unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen, listeners out there. It is unbelievable, the information we have at our fingertips. You want to do a financial plan right now? All you got to do is load up Google. You can go to any one of the web pages of any one of the banks. You want to do a budget? Push the button that says budget. Answer the questions. How much do I spend on rent? How much do I spend on my mortgage payment? What are my car payments, etc., etc., etc.? You can make yourself a budget. You print that out into a PDF file on your desktop. Then you do a retirement calculation, same web page. Print that out to a PDF on your desktop. You want to find the amount of life insurance you need, the exact amount? You can do that too, same way. Print it out, the file on your desktop. Make a file on your desktop called My Financial Plan and drag all these icons into it. Draw a box around and combine them into one PDF file, and then export it to Word, and you can now have it in your word processor. You don't even have to type hardly a keystroke. It's unbelievable. I can do that on my cell phone. I got an iPhone 6, which itself is unbelievable. I can dictate to it. I sent myself 2 reminder text messages driving out here today without taking my eyes off the road. I just push the button, I call up Siri, and I say, Siri, send a text message. Siri comes back and says, to whom shall I send it? And I say, Fred Snyder. And she said, well, I got 5 Fred Snyders in the database here. Which one? And then I read back to her my cell phone number. Okay? And then she says, what do you want to say? And I dictate whatever I want to say. Haven't taken my eyes off the road. And then she reads it back to me and says, shall I send it? And I say yes. And it's sent. And that's a little reminder that's in my text messages on my cell phone without taking my eyes off of the road. Are you up to date when it comes to technology? You want to do better financially? Get up to date on technology. I once interviewed a fellow by the name of Randy Reynolds, who was very high up in the financial planning community on television. And I asked him, I said, what is the best source of information today for financial advisors? And he said, the internet. And it is. I don't think we had Siri back in those days. But Siri's there right now. I mean, I did a lot of fishing this year at the mouth of the Fraser, and a few times I was out there, it was pretty bumpy. I got a program on my cell phone right now that says it's called Radar. And I can look up the water, how turbulent the water is, how rough the water is at the mouth of the Fraser, right on radar, without even going there, right up to date. Technology is unbelievable. So if you're not up to date on your technology, it's time that you became up to date. You can buy a computer right now that used to cost $10,000, a laptop computer. I got one sitting in front of me right now. To get one that's as powerful as this one, 10 years ago it was $8,000 or $9,000. This one here right now, maybe $2,000 at the most, if that. There's no excuse for not being up to date when it comes to technology, because financial knowledge is the key ingredient in financial success. The greater your knowledge, the greater your chances of success. You need to be able to ask the right questions of your financial advisor to be sure that you're on track. So here's some questions for you. Do I have a financial plan? Do I have one? If I don't, why do I not have a financial plan? Why am I procrastinating? Why am I putting it off? All I got to do is call Frida, 604-737-3512. Why would I procrastinate about something so important? Having a job and earning money is important, but isn't it even more important to keep some of those hard-earned dollars? Think about that. Do I have the best products inside my financial plan? Do I have the best investment funds? Do I have some investment funds that perhaps I should be weeding out of my portfolio? Does my portfolio need some fine-tuning? Is my portfolio too volatile or too risky? Is the rate of return on my portfolio the rate of return that I need to achieve my financial objectives? Do I have clearly defined financial objectives? Like I'm 40 right now. Do I know when I want to retire? Is that a goal? Maybe I don't want to retire. Maybe I never want to retire. That's okay too. I think the key is to be able to retire when you want to, not to necessarily retire. And what will my retirement look like if I stay on the course that I'm on right now? Am I going to be able to do a little fishing like I love to do, or skiing at Whistler, or retire or take a trip to a nice warm climate, maybe spend a month out of every year in Hawaii, or Phoenix, or Scottsdale, or whatever, Palm Springs? Can I visualize myself having achieved my most important financial goal, whatever it may be? And what is my most important financial goal? Here's a list of my goals. What are the priorities? Which one of my goals is the most important of all? I'm going to take the time every now and then to motivate myself. Do I have a list of affirmations that I can look in the mirror and have a good talk with myself and make sure nobody's watching? Okay? Am I going to pay myself first? Do I have a budget? Do I manage my cash flow properly? Do I know how much I spend every month to live? Do I know how much money comes in after taxes every month to pay those expenditures? Am I carrying balances on my credit cards? Am I taking or making steps to make sure that any interest expense that I incur along the way is tax deductible? Because you can arrange your affairs using processes such as the Smith maneuver to make your interest tax deductible. And you should consider that. If you have interest expense that's not deductible, that's one of the easiest ways to create cash flow. Am I investing the tax refunds from my RRSPs into my TFSA? Am I doing that? Am I paying too much for the wrong kind of life insurance? Do I know how much life insurance I need? Have I covered off on all the what ifs? What if I become mentally incompetent due to an accident or Alzheimer's or disease or something like that? Who will look after me if that happens? Will my money last as long as I do? I'm planning on living to be 95. Will my money last until I'm 95? How will I pay for my life insurance after I retire? My life insurance premiums are $2,000 a month. Where's that $2,000 a month come when I retire? That's got to come out of my retirement income. Have I worried? Have I really thought about that? Do I have a financial advisor to act as a coach? Someone that can sit down with me and guide me and put me back on track should I get off track? I mean, there's a lot of things you have to consider. Have you taken the time to do that? If you haven't, you should. What about my estate? Do I have a proper will? Have I updated my will lately? WESA changed all the rules not very long ago. Have I taken into account the rule changes? Used a codicil to straighten my will out? Do I have an enduring power of attorney so that someone else can look after my financial affairs if I become mentally incompetent for whatever reason? Do I have a representation agreement to look after my health needs should that event happen? If I'm not able to look after myself, if I become ill or end up in a coma, does someone have the right to pull the plug? That's a representation agreement. Have I considered how to dispose of my body when I pass away? Do I have proper executors to look after my financial affairs after I pass away? Do I have guardians to look after my children should that event come up? There's so much. And you need checklists to make sure that these things happen. Someone once said to me that a proper estate plan is all about love. And it is. I remember one time when my aunt passed away, one of my cousins called me and said, "We don't know what to do. How do we dispose of the body?" She'd never left any instructions whatsoever. And this was a real dilemma. I had to make the decision. Her own kids couldn't. So I said, cremate her. I don't know if that was the right decision or not, but somebody had to make that decision. And that's not a good thing. So we're out of time. I hope that today's session was helpful. And any questions, you want to take it to the next level, give Frida a call. You can call Frida right now down at the office at 604-737-3512. We have to go. Talk to you same time, same station next week. Bye for now.
If you'd like Fred to review your portfolio, call his office right now at 604-737-3512. That's 604-737-3512.